Hello. This video is going to take a look at the strategy design pattern and one example of it in the use of a travel scenario. So in this first exercise, we're going to start out by making a travel itinerary class. And over the course of the exercise, we're going to sort of show how the strategy design pattern is going to fit into this little puzzle that we're building. So to get started, let's go over to 07B strategy. Let's make ourselves a, what do we call it? It was travel itinerary. Sure, so travel itinerary.cpp. And what do we have to do? So we need a travel itinerary class. It needs to have a destination, a start date, a trip completed, a constructor, and a display. So just some basic stuff. Nothing that we haven't seen before. So class, travel itinerary. We need to have these different attributes. So I suppose we can just represent these with strings. Perhaps in a more involved scenario, we might be able to want to represent the date in a better way. But for now, I think we'll just go with strings for everything. Keeps it simple. String, the start date. I guess trip completed sounds like it doesn't need to be a string. We can probably stick with a Boolean there. Okay, so now I have my attributes. Probably I should make these private. And we'll make some public functions to initialize my travel itinerary. So I need 2 strings and a Boolean to assign them to their respective attributes. And a method display itinerary to display. And since this function is really short, I'm just going to put it all in one CPP file. We don't really need anything too fancy here. I think I will grab a make file just so that I have it, but my make file I think is not going to really be as useful in this video since I don't plan on having too many different files here. But just in case, we'll have this here. Let's just make this compile main, and we'll execute it and make a travel exe. And for my display, let's output the trip to destination begins on start date. If it's completed, we'll also print the trip is over. Okay, so I have my travel itinerary. Let's make sure we can make it work. So main.cpp should include travel itinerary. And here I'll make one. Travel itinerary ti. And let's say that we're going to take a trip to Cartagena. Let's leave on February 28th, 2025, and let's say that we've already gone. In that case, actually, let's move it earlier. It's the 6th, or about 5th. Sure. Ti dot, what's the name of the function? Display itinerary. Let's see if I can display it. Launch, terminal, make and run. All right, trip begins on this date and the trip is over. Okay, so far, hopefully nothing too special, just setting up our little travel itinerary that we will build on in a moment. Okay, so now that we have our travel itinerary, we're gonna make a travel mode. Travel mode will be an abstract class and it will have a travel method. And since it's an abstract class, this means this will be a pure virtual method. And our plane and car, which will be our travel modes, will implement these 2 functions and will update our travel itinerary to accept a pointer and execute that travel. So, sounds like a lot, but it's not as scary as it seems. We're gonna clean everything up. So we just have these 3 things. Let's put them into file 1. Folder 1, and then we'll put these into a new folder. Okay, so step 1 is I need a travel mode. So let's make a new file called travel mode. And this will have a class travel mode. Sounds fine to me. And it has a pure virtual function called, what was it, travel. So if we're going to be traveling by plane or by car, I think we'll, again, kind of keep things simple. We're just going to say that we're going to print out a little message. So void travel. And to say this is a pure virtual function, I need to say it equals 0. Now, I cannot make a travel mode, but I can get some subclasses of it. So let's start with plane.cpp, which will include travel mode.cpp. And so plane will be a travel mode. To keep our code a little short here, I'm just going to implement the travel method. It's void travel. And it will simply say, we are traveling by, did I spell that right? Traveling by plane. To do cout, I will need to include iostream, use the standard namespace. So now I have my plane. Let's duplicate it for a car. So here's my car, traveling by car. Since I'm including travel mode multiple times, I also need to make sure I don't have multiple inclusions of it. And now I have a plane and a car as options of travel modes that I could use for my itinerary. So let's modify this as well. Instead of just having destination, start date, trip completed, we'll also add, which means I need to include travel mode, a pointer to a travel mode. And so this will be our travel mode. Oops, sorry, travel mode. And so while we're displaying our itinerary, we'll also take our travel mode and go and call the travel method. Okay, now to put all this together, so now we have our travel itinerary, takes a travel mode, it's part of our trip. When we display our itinerary, we will mention what the plan is, then we will do the traveling, and then if the trip is completed, we will mention that. And we access our travel mode using a travel mode pointer. And the two kinds of travel modes that we can actually make are planes and cars. And they travel in their appropriate way. Now in my main, I need to include plane and car if I want to make those things. So let's say that I start up by making a plane P, car C. So now I will start by traveling by plane, display the itinerary. If I want to, oh, I see. Actually, I was supposed to have an execute travel that will call the method. So let's do that instead of putting it in display. Over here, we'll have a void execute. Was it execute travel? Yeah. Execute travel. It doesn't need any parameters because it's simply access our pointer and travel. Now, if I want to be able to change the travel mode, which I currently can't, let's get a function for that. Void set travel mode, given a new one. So that we can actually travel with both options. Now in our main, we have our plane and our car. Initially, we have our plane assigned to our travel itinerary, so we can do ti.execute travel. And then I also can set the travel mode to be the car. Sorry, it should be the address of the car and the address of the plane. These are important, by the way. Because I'm expecting a pointer, I can't just pass an object. The planes are travel modes, but my functions are expecting pointers to them. Okay. I think last but not least, if I'm going to execute travel, probably I should set the the trip completed to be true. And so at the very end, we'll do ti.display itinerary. So if this works correctly, we have our itinerary to go to Cartagena. We will travel by plane. It will say what our plan is. We haven't gone there yet. We'll execute the travel. We'll change the travel by car, and we'll travel by car, and then we'll display the itinerary after all that and see what happens. Okay, so yeah, okay. Make run. Okay, I think I may have not modified the right file. Yes, that's right. So it looks like I modified the wrong stuff here. That's okay. I think we just have to rename some files is all. This is my mistake for not closing files properly when I should have. So my main here is the wrong main. And I think that's the only problem, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, the travel itinerary is also wrong. Okay. We can fix this easy enough. Because this is the one that got changed, right? Yeah. So let's take both of these, cut them and paste them here. Take both of these, cut them and paste them here. And both of these, and cut them and paste them here. Just a bit of rearranging, but now we should be in the clear. Oh, what did I mess up? Unexpected qualifier in travel itinerary execute travel. Yes, I have TM travel, but it should be travel mode. Okay, try that again. There we go. So our trip begins on this date. The trip is over. That doesn't sound quite right. Oh, because I think I initially let's see here. If the trip is completed, when I made my original itinerary, I said it was already true. So let's make it so I haven't traveled yet. We'll change the date to later. Let's give that another go. Clear, make run. There we go. So we begin our trip, travel by plane, travel by car, and then we finally end our trip at the proper time. All right, so at the end of this, we have our itinerary. Our itinerary takes a mode of travel. We can change the mode of travel as we like, and every time we change it, we will travel differently. We'll either travel by car or by plane. All right, so this is basically what the strategy idea is regardless of whether I'm going by plane or by car, in both cases I am traveling, I will complete my trip. But perhaps doing things with a plane will be different from doing things with a car. Maybe you have to pay more money. Perhaps you can include that in your travel function. But it's up to you. The flexibility of the strategy pattern is that although all these functions, travel, should all travel, it's up to you how you can decide what they will, how they will differ from one another as long as they all meet the same basic criteria. Okay, let's continue. So now that we can travel, let's get some accommodations. We'll make an accommodation abstract class that will have a stay method and implement hotel and Airbnb, each which has stay. And travel itinerary will take an accommodation pointer and add a book stay method that calls stay. So here I'll also make clean. Grab all this, a new folder, and paste. And close this all properly. Now we can take advantage also of the fact that we're kind of doing the same sort of thing here, where instead of car, plane, and travel mode, we want some new options here. So our travel mode, we're now looking for a new accommodation. And here we're going to stay. Instead of a car, we're looking for Airbnb. This will include accommodation, Airbnb. What a cheap place to stay. Not. So now I have my Airbnb, and then for this, I think it said hotel. Yeah, let's make a hotel. Hotel will also be a kind of accommodation where we can stay. And we can say, this is completely unaffordable. Great. Okay, so now we can stay at our 2 different accommodations. And similarly, with what we did with travel mode, we'll also add a accommodation pointer, AC. So here we'll include accommodation. Most likely I'll need to put I already have Pragma ones here. Look at that, very convenient. We'll need to assign the accommodation. So we'll need accommodation, AC. And now we have execute travel. Now at this point, this function is getting a little unwieldy. We have a lot of functions going on in here. I should at this point separate this into a header. So let's duplicate this. We want to have a header file. My header file doesn't need to show me how to implement display itinerary or execute travel. I suppose I can leave in set travel mode, it's really short. And also I want to be able to book a stay. Okay, and now my travel itinerary.cpp can just include travel itinerary.h. I don't need this other stuff. I do need to implement display itinerary and execute travel. But the rest of this can all go. And these are part of my travel itinerary class, as well as book stay. And here I take my accommodation and I stay. Okay, so now my travel itinerary not only has a method of travel, but also has an option for me to book a stay. So to show this off in my main, first of all, actually my make file, I should now make sure I include my travel itinerary code. And in my main, I will include the header file. And now let's book our stays. I'm going to need to have a Airbnb, so I guess I need to include those as well. I need Airbnb and hotel. This will be AB, hotel H. And here, let's get the Airbnb, ti.bookastay. And let's see what happens. Make run. Oh, what am I missing? Airbnb has a capital B as the second B here. Let's fix that. BNB. Okay. Oop. A is not declared the scope. Because it's AB. There we go. Just little typos that we're fixing one at a time. Okay. What a cheap place to stay, not. And now I can also decide, you know what, instead of a Airbnb, actually I want a hotel. And now I get a different message. And as I choose, I can decide do I want to stay at one place or the other place. In either case, I'm still booking stays. All of the code associated with that remains the same. The only difference is, do I use the Airbnb version or do I use the hotel version? So same sort of principle as we saw with the travel mode, just in a different form. On to our last exercise. So, Add methods to travel itinerary to allow users to switch between different travel modes and accommodations. Then add a depart method that sends the user on their trip and does everything. Okay, so right now our main method's kind of clogged with all the stuff that we want to do. Let's make it so the travel itinerary itself can let people switch between some travel modes, and add a depart method to actually go. Okay, so right now I have to actually make a plane and a car and an Airbnb and a hotel, and that's all very clunky. So what we'll do instead is make our travel itinerary. Oops, here we go. Where we actually don't start out with the travel mode and accommodation set just yet. But what we will do is we'll say, okay, well, we're going to have a depart at some point. We'll also have so right now I have a set travel mode, which just sets it given a pointer, but I don't want to have to take a pointer and do all this. How about we let them choose travel mode, given no parameters, and we'll ask them to type it in. In addition to choose travel mode, we'll have them choose accommodation. So these and depart all need to go here. We need to implement all these functions. Now, luckily, these two travel mode accommodation will actually be very easy to do together. Depart will have, I think, mostly the stuff that we have in our main, and I'll do that last. Okay, so given the travel mode, we will ask the user. Now, do I include IOStream here? I do. Okay, so let's handle it. See how choose a travel mode. P, plane, or C, car. P equals plane, or C equals car. And we'll read in their input. If their input is P, then we will delete whatever their original, because we have a travel mode and an accommodation. So whatever the old travel mode was, oh, let's make sure that we put these as part of our class, by the way. Travel itinerary. We'll delete what the old travel mode was, and then we will say travel mode equals new plane, and I think in order for this to work, this needs to include plane and car, and I imagine eventually hotel and plane, car, hotel, Airbnb. Which then means, of course, I don't need to include this all in the main. I can just include travel itinerary and it has all this stuff. Okay. So now that I have all these things in my code here, I can make a new plane. Otherwise, my travel mode is a new car. And then basically for the accommodation, I'll do almost the same thing. Except here I'm saying choose an accommodation. A is Airbnb, or H equals hotel. And then, oh, sorry, I put equals P, but we're looking for quotes P, quotes A. Also remember to delete the travel mode regardless of which option I pick to make sure I don't have memory leaks of extra dynamic stuff sitting around. And here I'm not deleting the travel mode, I'm deleting the accommodation and getting a new Airbnb and a new hotel. And when I depart, Well, what do we want to do? We want to book the stay, display the itinerary, execute the travel, and then display the itinerary again. So book stay, display itinerary, execute travel. And I suppose at the beginning I should actually choose travel mode and choose accommodation. Okay. So I have all these functions now for my itinerary, which means I don't have to have quite as much in my main function because it's actually all been stored here. My mistake. I've been putting all this into example 3. So I think that's okay. I suppose just this video will have missing the third example of some of the code, but hopefully if you've been following along, it shouldn't be too big of a miss. Apologies for the lost code that I've been overwriting. Forgot to make a new copy. Got a little excited. Okay, let's try making this first of all. Can I make this? Make clean. Make run. Oh, I should make sure my main actually departs. And I don't need to give it any of these pointers anymore. So now I can just say my main is really short. Make my itinerary and go. All right, let's find out. Can I do this, or do I have some errors to fix? Let's find out. What happened? Expected new type specifier before Airbnb. And so where is that? That is in my travel itinerary over here. No, I think these, yeah, okay. I might not need the parentheses. Let's see if that's not required. Oh, and was that specific to accommodation only? For choose accommodation only. Interesting. I would have expected it for over here. Accommodation of the travel itinerary is also a pointer. Yeah, okay. Very weird. Let's see if that got fixed. Make run. Oh, I named the thing wrong. It said Airbnb. This is where you gotta be very careful about how you name stuff. Airbnb. There we are. Okay, try again. Okay, let's say I want to go buy a car. Ooh, that's not a good sign. Invalid pointer. Okay. I think this is a case of me trying to delete, but there wasn't anything to delete, so it aborted. And so to fix this, I will simply say if accommodation is a null pointer, delete accommodation. And this will protect me from that happening. Let's try that again. Just making sure I don't delete stuff I shouldn't delete. Plane, hotel. All right, we're traveling by plane and all is well. Now to make sure that I can do this properly, let's actually go on a couple trips. How about we depart twice and see what happens? Depart, depart. So first I'll go by plane and Airbnb. And now I'll go by car and hotel. And you can see each time that I take the trip and it changes, and also the second time the trip is already over because I've already done the traveling. And so we have quite a bit of a program here. Apologies again for accidentally erasing the third set of examples. So I'll just rename this as EX3-4. But what have we at the end of the day? Well, we have our travel itinerary class, which is actually really easy to look at what it does here. The code is obviously quite a bit longer, but you can kind of see all of the options available to you in the travel itinerary just by looking at the header. The CPP file is obviously quite a bit longer because I have to actually implement everything, but travel itinerary will say I can depart, I can display, execute travel, book the stay, choose the different modes of things. And when I build a travel itinerary, I only have to select these 3 attributes, and I can use choose travel mode and accommodation to allow the user to actually pick which of these they want to do. When they're picking these things, we're generating new planes, new cars, new Airbnbs, new hotels, And you'll notice that the second time I run it through, we actually are going to erase those newly dynamically allocated objects and replace them with other ones. This is important just to make sure that because if you don't delete this, then every time that you choose accommodation, you make a brand new Airbnb or a brand new hotel, and then you have a billion of them and they waste all the memory in your computer. So it's important to remember to do this deletion. Anytime that you are working with pointers in the way that we are, where we're just making dynamically newly created accommodations and travel modes along the way. Okay, so that wraps it up for strategy. Hopefully you found this video to be useful, and I'll see you in class. Bye-bye.